Hello and welcome. We are with Vasantha Kumar, Director Marketing and Communications at IBM. Vasant, thank you so much for joining us. How is IBM using social media to make itself relevant to the younger generation?
Okay. So, Payal, our basic approach when it comes to our marketing and communications is increasingly becoming digital first, right? And within that, as the technology industry is transforming, we are seeing a whole new generation of audiences that as a brand we need to appeal to, right? And that includes a whole lot of millennial audiences in terms of the people whom we need to work for us, a whole generation of developers who would develop the future software that the world would run on. And obviously from that perspective, and all these audiences are on platforms like social and other digital platforms. So amongst the things that we are doing to engage with these audiences is really sort of reaching them through both interesting means such as engaging with them on how do you bring alive a technology. So I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Cloud computing sounds like the most sort of serious topic you can think about. So one of the things that we did was to actually build a food truck. You would ask me, what is a food truck, right? So what we did was we used one of our technologies which actually allows you to create recipes, right? So the whole thing is that chefs today can combine 2 or 3 ingredients to create a dish, right? And normally chefs have a certain set of specific ingredients that they would combine to create a dish, right? What we can do with using computers is come up with extremely surprising combinations. For example, apple combined with chocolate combined with garlic, right? The technology tells you that food have certain chemical compositions, and these can be combined to either give you great flavor, great taste, or very surprising mouthfeel. So this is one of the examples. So what we did was we came up with these set of recipes, got in chefs to create something like a Vietnamese apple kebab, right? And using things like this actually engage with a whole lot of people who would otherwise not engage with either technology or a brand, right? That's one example. Right. There are similar such examples, for example, using digital to create art, right? Again, this is another example, coincidentally also happens to be cloud, to actually bring alive the whole concept and relate people to the brand. So it's really about what can you make with IBM, right, which kind of brings alive your thoughts and your feelings and so on and so forth.
So how can you use social media to make B2B interesting?
So one clear example in all of this, which I forgot to mention, was really crowdsourcing. Right. So for example, in the example that I gave you about the food truck, we actually use social to actually understand from people what would they like to eat and vote and so on and so forth, right? So that's one part of it. The other way in which we use B2B, we use social to make B2B interesting is actually engage people through things like hackathons, right? As you know, India today, and specifically the context of Modi and Achhe Din, right? There's a lot of buzz about smart cities, right? And each of us have our own ideas, for example, about how to make India a smarter place. So, for example, we have a platform called India Onward, right? Which is a platform where we bring in influencers and people to actually express themselves, right, with their thoughts and their vision on how India can actually progress. So there are multiple aspects on which you can actually engage people, right, at various parts of the sort of equation. It could be on entertainment, it could be on education, it could be on how things can be made more inspirational, things could be made more fun, and so on and so forth.
So, do events like your hackathon actually, are they actually run by any agency, or is this an in-house IBM attempt?
So we do both. Our preferred model of working is an extremely collaborative one, because what we found is that you get the best results when you actually bring together various skill sets, right? So like I explained on the panel, what we found is bring together all the expertise, whether it is expertise on our product or platforms or our offerings, bring together the design expertise, bring together the content expertise, bring together the UI or the UX expertise, and so on and so forth in a agile working environment. And I think the trick there is also the agile methodology, which isn't the sort of the old way of working, where you would say that let's create a campaign end to end and then release it. What you're also seeing is, have sort of, let's say 2-week periods of time, and you set yourself smaller goals, release beta versions, test and move forward, right? So our preferred methodology is get everybody together, right, and work through, rather than sort of have these divisions between client and agency and various agencies and so on and so forth. This also goes back to the whole concept of the brand newsroom, right? We've effectively sort of experimented with that concept as well, because as you go more and more into this whole sort of 24/7 marketing, right, that is gaining currency, right? And a brand newsroom again requires various parts of the creative process to come together, be empowered and work in real time.
Right. So too many agencies, too many responses. What are the challenges of going social?
So I think the big challenge of going social always is content.
Okay.
Right. I think if we were to net it down, I think the really big challenge always is content, right? Which is and social and mobile together doesn't make your job easy, because if content is king, then context is queen. So it isn't just about the right content; it is the right content, because more and more people are consuming content on the mobile device. So it is really, and mobile allows you to know the location and so on and so forth, right? So it's about the right content at the right time, right, in the right sort of state of mind. And to me, it's really not about, again, taking the same content and replicating it across. How will you be native to the particular platform? Right? How do you create content which works for, let's say, Twitter versus what works for, let's say, a Facebook versus what works on your blogs and so on and so forth.
So what is the social platform that you think is the most powerful, say, in the Indian context currently?
So, Payal, the way we evaluate platforms is not necessarily one versus the other. We see each of them as building a certain community and engaging with that particular community, and more importantly, we see social as and the various social platforms as a set of touch points across the whole array of the brand touch points. So if you were to take a brand, right, a customer frankly doesn't sort of mentally slot yourself in saying, aha, I'm interacting with this brand on social, and tomorrow I'm going to interact with this brand through a person. I'm going to interact with this brand through, let's say, an offline. So we also, for example, have a customer experience lab, or I'm interacting with through offline advertising. That doesn't happen, right? Or through customer service. Each of these are brand touch points, right? And the way we look at it is the combination of all these touch points creates the customer experience, right? So rather than go from what I call social engagement to customer engagement, our vision is to sort of curate, or rather orchestrate all these touch points to create a superior customer experience, because we believe that when your customer is engaged with you, he then engages that much stronger on the social channels as well.
Okay, a lot of companies find it difficult to correlate ROI with social media. What has IBM's experience been?
So when you take this, so two parts to this answer again, right? One is when you look at the brand, or rather social as one of the touch points for the brand, right? Then what you're really looking at is how well are you doing on your customer experience, and what parts of the brand has influenced the customer experience a lot. So you're actually moving the conversation away from just pure ROI in terms of measuring it as a broadcast channel, versus it actually playing a larger role, right? And so in our case, our usage of the various social medium, right? For example, like I mentioned, we have a platform called India Onward, right? We use social to actually engage people on that particular platform. So our measure of social isn't about the social channel per se, but it's about how a channel, for example, like LinkedIn, actually helps us enhance the engagement on India Onward, which actually leads to the overall brand health. So at one level, we would actually measure brand health. We would very importantly, for example, measure employee engagement and those sort of metrics, right? Yes, we do look at efficiency metrics on the social medium, etc. But I look at those to actually help me see, okay, how can I make that particular medium a lot more efficient and a lot more effective? It isn't a either or decision. So for example, if I'm doing an activity on LinkedIn, my measure of that isn't about should I do LinkedIn or not. I think that decision is really to be left to the marketing team and their judgment, right? But having decided on that, how can I progressively make it more and more efficient is what I would use metrics for.
So in IBM, is social limited to the marketing team, or is it organization wide?
Not at all, not at all. In fact, it's the other way around. I would in fact say it's the other way around. So I think our big sort of use of social is actually internally, right? We have a huge role that we have. In fact, I have a whole team within my marketing team which actually focuses on, so we don't call it internal communications, we actually call it workforce enablement, right? And the objective behind that is to actually use social to engage with our employees and to get them to collaborate a lot more, get them to collaborate amongst each other, to get them to ideate, right, and do their work in a lot more effective manner, right? That's a huge part of social. The other important thing is so one of the 4 tenets of the IBM brand is about how we use the IBMer, right, as the face of the IBM brand.
Right.
And our stated policy on social, right, is not to have brand channels. We do have brand channels, but our focus is really to focus on our IBM experts as a face of IBM on social. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, the social channel is a human channel. It's human to human interaction, right? You go on to social because you want to talk to people, right? You want to talk to family, you want to talk to friends, you want to talk to peers, you want to talk to people. You don't want to talk to a brand channel, right? So and you don't want to hear brands speak. You want to hear people speak, right? So what we do is we actually work with experts within the organization. They could be technical experts, they could be business experts, and so on and so forth, and actually help them propagate their point of view, right, and build their own communities and get into the conversations and so on and so forth.
Some people are attending the social media week here were of the view that social media is overhyped. Would you agree with that view or disagree?
I wouldn't say it's overhyped at all. I think where I think we tend to sort of need to get a little bit sort of temper is really understand the role that it plays. I think today, whether we take what happens with the World Cup, right, whether what happened with the elections recently, whether what happens during a time of crisis, I think firstly, I think we should stop thinking about social as a pure marketing channel, right, or as a media channel. I mean, just as television today isn't a media channel, I mean, it has a far more cultural role in our lives. I think the role of social as a part of society, right, is something that we need to recognize as being its first role, right, on how it drives conversations, how it becomes a commentary on culture, how it becomes a commentary on the sort of social fabric, right? And I think that is here to stay, you know, and we are going to see more and more of that. I mean, the whole sort of second screen experience. I mean, I know for a fact that when the World Cup football was on at 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and many of us obviously were watching it alone, right? We kept in touch with some of our friends, right, running almost like a parallel commentary on Twitter, right? So that's the kind of role that social would play in your life as we go along. I mean, most of us planning holidays, right, today know the role that a TripAdvisor, for example, plays. So I don't think we're overhyping the role of social. I think it's fundamental to how we take decisions, right, and how customers are going to take decisions.
3 good and bad things about social media.
I think the 3, okay, if I were to sort of count the 3 good things about social, firstly, I think is its ability to get people connected, right? I think secondly, it's about exposing you to all kinds of interesting content, especially through various influencers. You can keep in touch with people, otherwise you wouldn't be able to. And some really smart people at that, right? And thirdly, always a feeling that you're never really alone, right? I think in terms of the not so good things, I think firstly, I think you're getting into an age where there's too much of content, right? And at times there's too much of what I call the me-former content, where people are talking about, like I said, you know, what a lovely sunset and this and that. So how do you sort of how do you sort of move away from the wheat from the chaff, right? That is, I think, the second bigger thing. And thirdly, we're living in an age where we are time constrained and we are, attention constrained. So how do you re-engineer the rest of your life to have this? And last but not the least, and this is an interesting one, I just read somewhere that China, in one of the towns, I forget, I think the name is Chongqing, actually has a separate mobile walkway for people who can walk by looking at the social feeds, right? The not so good thing about social, I think, is it's the next biggest traffic hazard.
All right, Vasant, on that note, we'll wind up this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.